Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. So sorry for the late start, but welcome. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. If you want, while you're waiting, please feel free to just pop your name and pronouns and where you're from in the chat. We're so excited to see you all today. And again, we'll get started in just a moment. If you're just joining us, hi, welcome. My name is Rose and I work at Common Cause, and I'm here with my colleague Danielle. Thank you so much for coming to training with us on this Inauguration Day Eve. We appreciate you all being here. We're going to get started in just a moment as we continue to let folks in. We're a big group today. Don't want to cut anyone off. So again, if you want to just introduce yourself with your name, where you're from, and pronouns in the chat, that would be great. I'm already trying to count how many states that y'all are from that I've visited. So this is a fun game for me. In just a moment, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all, just so we can all be on the same page. So I'll actually go ahead and do that now. All right, I'm seeing a smattering of states. This is all very exciting.
It's insane how many people are here. Hi, guys.
Hi, everybody. So if you're looking for the 101 social media monitoring training, you are in the right place. I see a bunch of folks are here. So I think we are going to go ahead and get started. We are recording too, so folks can always review what we've talked about today. So again, hi, welcome to our social media monitoring training with Common Cause. I'm so happy to virtually see all of you here this evening. Just a few Zoom notes. I feel like at this point in the pandemic, a lot of us know how to use Zoom, but it may not be familiar to everyone. So you're going to go ahead and use the chat icon if you want to send the group or us panelists a message. It's a great way to put a question in the chat, just like you have now, putting your names and where you're from. We also have designated stop points where we're going to pause for questions. So don't worry if your question isn't answered right away. It might be that a ton of people have that question, so we're going to save it for the question period. Again, like I said, this training will be recorded, so you can review it again later. So just to introduce ourselves, my name is Rose Lang Meso. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Stop Disinformation Field Manager here at Common Cause National, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Danielle.
Hi, everyone. My name is Danielle Wooten. I'm from North Carolina, and I am the Social Media Monitoring Manager here at Common Cause.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danielle. Okay, so I briefly want to go over our training agenda just so we all know what we're doing today. So first, we're going to briefly discuss our program goals, our strategy, and our impact, just to make sure that we all have the same understanding of what we're here to do today. Then we're going to talk about proactive inoculation content. And don't worry, there's a definition section at the beginning. So if this is all new to you, do not worry, you're in the right place. And if you've heard this before, it's always a good review, and we're going to learn some new stuff today too. We're also going to talk about how to assist voters. So even though right now we are not actively in an election, we're constantly in a state of in-between elections here at Common Cause. So during election seasons, our program helps voters with any questions they may have about voting and elections. We're going to teach you how to identify mis and disinformation through monitoring on social media. We're going to teach you exactly how to search for that content, what our reporting process looks like, and finally, after all of that, getting started here with us. So we're going to do our best to keep it to the hour 15, but again, if you have to hop early, we can always send you and you will automatically receive our recording. All right, so here are the definitions that I promised. The first one is super important to our mission here at Common Cause. So Common Cause is a nonpartisan organization. What does that mean? It means that we're not biased toward a particular political group or party. So no matter where mis or disinformation might come from, we disrupt it and we seek to remove it or correct it, depending on the context. Inoculation content is one of the two main pillars of our platform. Inoculation content defends voters and really all Americans against disinformation before it is seen, right? Think of this almost as a vaccine for disinformation. It's something that primes people to understand the truth. Then we have two types of false types of content that you might see when you're monitoring with us. The first is misinformation. So this is unintentionally misleading content. So what does that mean? For example, maybe somebody puts down the wrong date for a primary election, right? That would be something where the person probably isn't trying to spread lies, although in some cases, but in general, not trying to spread something that's wrong, but they've made an honest mistake. In another case, somebody might not know, say, how convictions work after an impeachment, right? And accidentally post misinformation about it. Disinformation is a bit more sinister. This is intentionally misleading content, right? So think about those big narratives that you may see that have been flying around social media and on major news outlets. These are often conspiracy theories about government process, ideas that the election was stolen, or that there has been mass voter fraud, all of which we know is demonstrably false. All right, so what are the goals of this program then? How are we going to tackle these issues? How are we going to get at this work? So we do two main things. We post inoculation content to a wide range of audiences. This helps us, again, to proactively educate all Americans and voters and helps us to saturate the market with factual information that acts as a counterweight to all of the, just disinformation and misinformation out there. And then we also fight mis and disinformation a lot more directly, right? So how do we do that? We flag mis and disinformation about our democracy directly to Common Cause. So not to the platforms, to Common Cause. And we'll talk about why in a little bit. And this helps us to empower all Americans by stopping deceptive practices so everybody has the truth and knows how to act as a result. All right, so why is social media monitoring so important? First of all, we know that online platforms are the new public square. And so this allows us to meet people where they are. We're not intruding on anyone. We're meeting people exactly where they're already talking about these types of issues, right? We also know that during COVID-19, it's not safe for many of us to leave our homes. And so this is a great and more accessible way to take part in action during this time. On social media, there are no borders, right? So like Facebook doesn't know where the Connecticut state line ends. And so this allows us to build connections across communities and geographies. We also take a super unique two-pronged approach where we have our inoculation content that we all post as a grassroots community and active social media monitoring efforts. And here's why you all as our volunteers are essential. So if we think about all of the mis and disinformation that's out there in internet land as this iceberg, myself and other staff like Danielle, we can only see the very tip of the iceberg, right? So those are your public posts. So think about what, say, elected officials post. What's in the New York Times headlines, right? We can search for those and we can flag them for removal. However, what we cannot find is everything else beneath the surface, right? Which is the vast majority of content online, especially content that's only images. So think about your favorite memes or cartoons, content that's been removed before we get to it, right? So if y'all are on a social media monitoring shift with us and you see something, it's important that you report it to us right away. Also, private groups, so think your WhatsApps, your Facebook groups, and direct messages are another space that we're simply not in. And so we really, really need your help monitoring in those spaces. Okay, so what's been our impact so far and where are we going? So we've trained over 4,000 monitors and have spent cumulatively over at this point 1.5 million hours monitoring on social media. Our biggest monitoring day to date was Election Day, where we had 1,500 monitors. We've had 46,000 reports filed by folks who have been working with us, and we've successfully removed and flagged content across platforms, as well as certain accounts in Coalition. So if you know what I'm talking about, you know. We also have tracked key disinformation narratives. That way we can have a better understanding of what's flying around online, right? And this helps us to make better content to combat it. We also can engage in direct action like text banking campaigns that are specifically linked to what we are seeing online. We also, during the election cycle in 2020, assisted thousands of voters who posted problems they were having on social media, and we connected them to our nonpartisan election protection hotline. So we've already done a lot, but there is so much more to do. All right, so super quick lightning round is voter assistance because it's not immediately relevant necessarily, but there's always an election coming up. So if instructed to by Common Cause staff, we want to be sure that you're empowered with everything you need to know to help a voter who might need help online. All right, so we have a little formula here. It's a very easy recipe. The first thing that you want to do is greet and identify yourself as a nonpartisan election protection volunteer. So when we're working in an election context, we work with a coalition of nonpartisan election protection advocates. And you want to greet yourself so people know that you're not a robot, right? Like you're a real person. And because of that, you can also meet the voter where they are. And you can also provide them with correct information to answer a question. So if they have a question like, what time are the polls open in North Carolina? You can give them the correct information from our Common Cause or other partner affiliates, the Secretary of State, or others. If you don't know the answer to the question, the right answer is always to call our nonpartisan election protection hotline, which is 866 our vote. You will very quickly learn this number if you work with us, and no need to be scribbling this all down, folks. We have tons of written resources that you can print out to do this work with us. And then lastly, if a voter needs help at the end, please go ahead and just re-emphasize the importance of voting. So this voter probably already hit a roadblock, right? And so we don't want them to sit the election out just because they had a question where they didn't fully understand process, right? We want to uplift and empower all voters. So it's really important that we do that. So here's an example that I would say is like a solid B plus. And Kathleen, if you happen to be on this training tonight, this is so good that you were able to like work directly with Alvin. So here we have this person named Alvin who has a question about absentee ballots. And Kathleen does a really good job here. So she greets the person and tags their handle. She says she's a volunteer with Common Cause New York, which is one of our affiliates. She empathizes. She clarifies. And lastly, the really important part is she cites herself, right? So she backs herself up with fact. Okay, the meat and potatoes starts here. Posting proactive inoculation content. So again, inoculation content inoculates or defends people against disinfo before it's been seen. It's much easier for us to give people correct info ahead of time than to try to address disinfo once it's already out there. So we have counter speech content that we use directly against it, but inoculation content is really central to our strategy. So here on the left-hand side, we have a graphic of 3 people who are saying that our votes were counted, our voices were heard, and our future is bright. This is a really good example of positive inoculation content. Now, while you only have a graphic here, we actually send you links directly to these types of posts, and they have text ready to go. So it's a plug and chug system and could not be easier to post across socials. Over here, we have building blocks, and it says, now we build a better future to show who we can be. And that is another excellent unity message that's really important during what, continue to be very divisive times. Again, these also prime people against narratives that seek to divide us or to sow any type of mistrust in the outcome of our elections. So our proactive posters, our inoculation team is the social media squad. So what is the social media squad? The social media squad, as I just said, is a team of proactive posters who receive inoculation content from Common Cause via text to post across social media. So it's super easy. You opt in, and we're going to opt in together if you would like, by texting CC Squad to 97779, and Danielle's going to put that right in the chat for anyone who would like to sign up. And you just get a link and context to post right on your social media directly from your texts. It's really, really easy and makes a huge difference. This inoculation work is essential. It allows us to combat current disinformation narratives without repeating them, right? We don't want to amplify them. We don't want to give them any more power. And it allows us to put positive, correct content online, which can be really refreshing when you're monitoring for mis and disinformation. So how this works. Members of the social media squad opt in, just like I said, texting CC Squad to 97779. Would you look at that? We thought ahead of time to put it in the slides. So that is what you will text to opt in. And then you go ahead and post our content to our socials. So remember, I said this is really easy. Once you opt into the squad, you're going to get links like this one. So don't take my word for it. Let's look at it together. So here we have our voices were heard, that narrative. And if I wanted to go ahead and post that, I could simply click where I want to post it, like Twitter. And then can you look at that? It gives me the tweet already. and I would simply press tweet. I'm a little ahead of the game. I tweeted this earlier today, but if you wanted to tweet this one, you would just click tweet now. You can also access our proactive content in the retweet channel in our Slack, which is where all of our work happens, but we'll touch more on that later. Lastly, we have another role besides the members in our squad. So if you want to take on a little bit more leadership, we have a volunteer squad leads program who helps us to recruit more members of the squad. So if you're interested in that, please say so in the chat, and Danielle will take a list of names of people that we can reach out to give more information. All right. Identifying misinformation and disinformation is the second core pillar to our work here at Common Cause to stop disinformation online. So this is an example of misinformation. Why? Well, here we have a state representative, and she's from Iowa, and she accidentally gave the wrong voter registration deadline in Iowa. So let's look at this for a moment. She gives a lot of helpful information. She's letting us know about what type of ID you need, and she's giving, resources for questions. But the problem is that unfortunately she miscalculated the deadline. So a few things to note here. I know this is misinformation because this is someone who is reputable online and is verified, right? So I expect a state representative wants to give me the right information to vote. And I would assume from the context of this post to vote potentially for them, right? So they don't really have an interest in giving me the wrong information. I also think that this is misinfo just from looking at it, because here she gives so much helpful info. And so this would be a person who I would think would be immediately responsive if I said, hey, actually the deadline is not in 11 days, it's in X number of days. So here's an example of misinformation. Here we have two others. So on the left-hand side, this person on Twitter is talking about what to do with your absentee ballot in a specific state, and telling people to use a ballot drop box rather than requesting a provisional ballot. So this is actually not correct in the state that this person was posting in, and we were able to know that because we have leads for our national organization in states around the country. This also undermines the validity of provisional ballots accidentally, right? So this is another example of misinformation. On the right-hand side, we have another similar post where Rusty here is trying to be helpful by saying that he's going to go vote as early as possible, and he gives the right date for early voting. So go Rusty, all good there. But saying it's impossible, well, nearly impossible, to get an absentee ballot really isn't accurate. We had a lot of success with absentee ballots throughout the country in the 2020 cycle. So this is another reason where this might be misinformation, where this person has a good intention, but what they're putting out there isn't actually so hot. And then we get to the scary stuff. And when I say scary, I just mean concerning content online. This is disinformation. So here we have an intel source that apparently says that President Trump did in fact win the election. So here we have Stop the Steal and Fight for Trump. So we know that this election was not stolen. It was a legitimate election, and that Joe Biden will be the president as of tomorrow, right? So this is disinformation that's being spread to try to undermine confidence, public confidence, most importantly, in our own democracy. So again, we're not concerned with this from a partisan perspective. We're concerned about this because of our democracy. On the right-hand side, we have Lynn Wood, who's a well-known disinformation supplier, who says that the Georgia Senate runoff was based on the unlawful 11-3 election. Said that the runoff was being conducted in violation of state law, said that China financed Dominion voting machines, and that he's going to try to file a lawsuit. He tried, I'll leave it at that. But again, here we see a clear motive to try to undermine public confidence in our voting and elections. And this is clearly disinformation. That is not true. Here's some other examples that I think are really interesting because they aren't quite as obvious. So here we have COVID America. With America_COVID. So they have a brand who replied at Joe Biden, no, meaning don't vote. Biden's got this in the bag. It's not safe to go vote. And this is actually trying to most likely suppress voters who take COVID-19 seriously, right? This is simply not true. There are many ways to exercise your rights, even in a pandemic, right? So there are ways to vote early. You can vote in person wearing a mask. You can vote by mail, right? So by giving a false narrative that someone's already won or is likely to win an election, this is disinfo because they're telling people not to vote in person because of COVID. Now, I should pause here. We don't care necessarily that this is COVID disinfo, right? I'm concerned about this because it touches on our democracy, on voting in elections. Here, we have a fake article from Before It's News, which, by the way, does that sound legit to anyone? Like, no, but okay. Where ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, CNN, and MSNBC to lose licenses, Trump remains in office, inauguration canceled. And obviously that is just a false headline, but we do see that it's getting traction. So it's of concern to us. So one thing about disinformation that you do not want to do is what I literally just did, which is amplify it, right? And here's why. We don't want to amplify disinformation because this means that more people will see it. So amplification includes commenting, reacting, so like even that little pesky angry react on Facebook, and sharing and debunking, right? And why is this? Social media platforms are here to make money. So when they see that a post is getting attention, platform algorithms say, ooh, attention, not is this good attention or bad attention, right? And so then more people are going to see that post. It can also create further confusion. So for example, I work at a pro-democracy nonprofit. So if I share a link about some ridiculous voting story and put, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen, someone might not see that I said it's ridiculous and only see the headline, right? And that could be really confusing, especially because I'm a trusted member of that person's circle. So these are two things that we do not want to have happen, which is why we do not amplify disinfo. Okay, I personally need a water break, so this is excellent timing. So I do want to take a quick temperature check though. And Danielle is going to try to give me any big questions that we're seeing in the chat. So Danielle, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so a lot of questions I've been getting is if you could repeat the number of the platforms that we monitor in terms of just for those in the back.
Yeah, absolutely. So I haven't said it yet. So that's why you haven't heard. So don't worry, you haven't missed anything. So our main core platforms to our program are Facebook, Twitter, Nextdoor, and Instagram. But we also monitor on Reddit, YouTube, and TikTok.
Okay, and also another question for you. We got a lot of folks from our non-English speaking Americans out here. They want to know what languages we monitor and if we need any help monitoring in other languages for other minorities groups.
We need all the help we can get. So we have some folks who are monitoring currently in Spanish and Portuguese. We also have some partners who monitor in other languages with us. But if you speak another language fluently and would like to monitor in that language community, that's extremely helpful, right? So we know that disinformation disproportionately is targeted at young people and people of color who may or may not have English as their first language. So if you do have that capacity, please, please, please let Danielle know in the chat and she will make a note of it.
Okay, a few are going to answer live here. There are over 300 of you on this webinar currently for Helen. Hi, Helen. And to answer Martin's question, what's our rationale for advising you to debunk? We don't want to amplify any negative posts or any disinformation out there. And also, as we're getting closer and closer to inauguration, we're seeing more radicalized people, and we don't want you guys involved with those types of groups or putting yourselves in any type of danger, because there's a slight risk of doxing, but we haven't had that happen at all.
Cool. Is that it for now, or?
Yeah, that looks like there could be it for now. Could be it for now. Sorry, guys, you guys are going too fast. Oh,
yeah, 384 of you, a very healthy turnout, but Danielle is one woman.
Sorry. Doxing is simply just when we've just harassment or finding out who this person is or using our organization or targeting us or you. We don't want that to happen to you, so we advise you not to interact with these harmful messages. So that's it. Okay, rest of these I'll answer in the chats. Thank you guys for your questions. We're gonna move on just for your time in mind.
Great. Yeah, no, awesome. Thank you so much. I do just want to underscore that your safety is my #1 priority, right? So I would prefer that you're safe and not interact with someone online who you don't feel comfortable with. So that's super important to us here at Common Cause. Okay, so now that we've done a lot of the basics, a lot of the background, let's get started. So first of all, if there are Twitter users in the house, we're going to start with Twitter. The first thing that you always want to do is be proactive, right? So you want to follow accounts and check out hashtags that are relevant to your area or to what you are monitoring for. You are going to be given a toolkit of search terms that we use depending on what we're looking for that day in social media monitoring land. So you do not need to guess. We use a handy tool called TweetDeck to set up column searches. If you have Twitter, you have TweetDeck. They just don't advertise it super well. So we're going to go through exactly how to make complex searches in TweetDeck. And it sounds harder than it is. And you're going to feel really cool and really techy once we see it. And I got too excited. Okay. Here we go. So this is what my Twitter currently looks like when I log into TweetDeck for the first time. So you're going to want to get rid of all of these, right? These are not relevant to our work. And to get rid of a column, you simply go up to these little sliders and click remove. Super simple. I jokingly call this swabbing the deck. It's a funny pun the first time. So this is what TweetDeck will look like once you've cleared it all up. If I want to search, I'm going to simply click my little magnifying glass and then search using terms that I'm interested in. So Danielle, throw me a term.
I'm going to go with voter fraud.
One of my classic terms. So if I want to find tweets with the phrase voter fraud, I'm going to put quotation marks around the phrase voter fraud. And that tells Twitter that I want those words together. So I'm not just looking for a tweet that says fraud. And I'm not just looking for a tweet that says voter. I'm looking for that whole phrase. I click my enter or return key. And now, as scary as this is, TweetDeck is going to spit out for me all of the public tweets that have this phrase in it. So this is a lot. So I like to narrow it down. How can I do that? If I go here and click these sliders again from before, I can click location. And then I can type in a city of interest, whether or not that's a certain location we're looking at that day, or you want to look in your own local community. So I'm going to put in near where I live, and it's not bringing it up today. So we'll just do the whole state of New York. Got to be flexible when it comes to these folks. You're very smart with the technology. So I'm then going to make my radius a bit bigger so it's more flexible. And now it spits out all of the tweets with the phrase voter fraud in TweetDeck. So here we have a tweet that says, if you honestly think there is no voter fraud in this country, then you are on drugs. It's been going on for decades. So obviously that is not true. And that's a good example of disinformation. If you wanted to copy this link, you would simply click these three little dots at the bottom and click copy link to tweet. And that's the same thing as doing a right-click copy or a Command C or however you usually copy. You will also notice I have a little robot here. Hi, little robot. And this is just a extension that I have on my browser called Bot Sentinel, which Danielle will take a moment in the, at some point to put in the chat. And Bot Sentinel gives me an idea of how trustworthy or legitimate the Twitter poster looks. So for example, asparagus latte, which just think about that for a second on its own. But asparagus latte here is classified as problematic, which means they could be more likely to be a bot than the average person. So while that doesn't tell us a lot alone, it's interesting as a data point, and I think it's fun. So now let's say I want to do another search, but I want to keep voter fraud over here. I simply click search again. And then Danielle, let's have a string of terms this time. Let's do voter fraud, and let's have something else too. What would you like?
Ooh, let's do January 17th.
Oh man, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the word or in capital letters between voter fraud and January 17th. If you were not aware, January 17th was a day where there was supposed to be a lot of uprisings at state houses around the country. If I put in these two phrases, it's telling TweetDeck, hey, I want to see tweets that have the phrase voter fraud or the phrase January 17th. And when I click search, it'll bring up tweets that meet this condition. Again, I can make it more specific by location if I want. However, if I want a tweet that has both of these terms, like voter fraud and January 7th, I'm going to change this to an and in capital letters, press enter, and then it'll bring up more information. So this is how TweetDeck works. Again, if you're not a Twitter user, no worries. We're going to go through all of our platforms one by one. Here on the left-hand side, we're showing how you monitor using TweetDeck. It's just bigger. So these were the columns I was working with before, but I wanted to make sure that everybody could see super clearly what I was working on and what I was doing. So at the top, we have our search terms. So in this case, we have voting and coronavirus. Then we have the location and area to cover. All right, so on Facebook, how are we going to search? We're going to do a few main things. First of all, we always want to be proactive, right? That's where we're going to post that inoculation content that we talked about earlier. So if you're on Facebook, we would love for you to join local pages and Facebook groups where you can post correct information and monitor for disinfo. Remember, you are our only way into these groups, but don't be in groups that don't make sense for you, right? So like if I was in a Charleston dads group, that would not make sense for me and nobody would believe what I say. There, you can also post the information to our 866-R vote hotline if we're in an election cycle, or uplift other trusted sources. You can search in two different ways, either directly on Facebook itself, where you can narrow by geography, date range, and private versus public groups, or you can search terms using a tool called CrowdTangle. So we're going to go through each in turn. I'm showing you what it looks like to use Facebook itself. Bigger here is a screenshot first, and then we'll actually look on my own Facebook. So here, a term that was popular back in the 2020 cycle was ballot harvesting. And as we hear more about voter fraud that is obviously demonstrably not happening, but as we hear more about this, terms like ballot harvesting, we suspect will come back, especially after things quiet down after the inauguration. So here, when I type in ballot harvesting, it gives me all sorts of options here of what I want to look at. So I can see posts that contain that phrase. I can see if there are people in my network or friends of friends using that phrase. I can also see if any of my Facebook groups are using the phrase. And if I look here, here's how it looks on my own Facebook. So at the very top, when I search, it's going to show things that are going pretty viral or are posted by major sources. I can scroll down, I can click people and see if there are people who I know posting about this. So I can toggle over here to friends of friends to keep it smaller. And luckily for me, ballot harvesting is not something that's super relevant in my network. If I scroll down, I can also see if it's in my groups or if there are groups that are talking about this. Now, I purposely picked ballot harvesting for one reason. The word harvest is in everything, y'all. We have harvest festivals, we have harvest crews, we have harvester bars, right? And so that's why sometimes we recommend that you instead use CrowdTangle to do some of your monitoring because it might get you somewhat more specific information. That said, if you are in a bunch of closed Facebook groups, that has such a big value add to our program because we can't monitor those spaces. I personally am not in a bunch, but if you are, that's so uniquely helpful. Okay, so now we're going to talk about using CrowdTangle to monitor Facebook. CrowdTangle you can think of as the equivalent for Facebook and Instagram to TweetDeck. So once you learn how to use one of these, you really do know how to use them all. So if I click here, I come to CrowdTangle, you need to request CrowdTangle using a form. And so we're going to be sure to provide you with that form at the end of the training. Please do be patient with us if you want to be added. We have a lot of folks and there's a big day tomorrow in monitoring land. So we'll get you all on though before the first shift tomorrow. So if I'm here, when I go onto CrowdTangle, this is what it'll look like when you sign in. Ben Shapiro right on the top, things we love to see. So here we are, we have one of our disinformation actors. And if I want to do one of my searches like I did for TweetDeck, I simply go ahead and click search. And it takes me to a new window. So if I do our same terms as last time for consistency, I can put in voter fraud and then search. And we have posts that have over 18 million interactions with the phrase voter fraud. Now, it will automatically show you posts first. Also, I should say this is in the last 24 hours. So just let that sink in. But it will show you first posts that are getting the most interaction. So this means the most likes, the most comments. That's what'll come up first. I like to change my settings. So again, if you're not a Facebook user, not to worry, folks. I see a few folks leaving the meeting. I get it. Y'all have things to do, but do not worry. We're coming for you for other platforms too. So again, if I'm going to search here, right now it's at most interactions. I like to go to newest, just so I see what's happening in the here and now. And here we go. We have some fun disinfo. I can see it already. So if I want to check out a post a little more closely, like I'm interested in seeing more about this Stand with Liberty page, I simply go ahead and click this little arrow at the top and click go to post. And then it'll just go ahead and open that in Facebook. And I can see more info, like I can see about the page. I can see the types of interactions it's getting and also the comments. So this is really helpful and allows me to get more of an insight on what I'm seeing on CrowdTangle. Now, just like we did before, we can add in our and or our or to tell CrowdTangle we want something a little bit more complicated or complex. So I'm going to put or, and to be consistent, I'll put January 17 again and hit search. And now this is something that I've done to show you what can happen if you use or on words that mean a lot of things. So there are going to be a ton of posts on Facebook with the phrase January 17th, right? So if you're using something like a date, you might want to replace or with and to make sure that you're finding exactly what you're looking for. And there were no results, which honestly is a pleasant surprise. Now, if I go back to voter fraud, maybe I want to look at a more specific location. I can do that. So something I can do is click local relevance and put in a region, a city, or a country. So we'll do the state of Oregon just for fun. And then we can see more of what's happening in the state. One last thing that I think is also interesting, but doesn't tell us enough on its own, but hey, I like to play around with CrowdTangle, so what can I say, is you can actually also click to see where the page admin, so the person who runs the page, what country they're in. So you could search for a country, like, I don't know, Russia, for example, and see where posts with the phrase voter fraud are coming out of Russian sources. And right now there are none, which kind of makes sense because most disinformation actually does come from home, even though we look at all disinfo, foreign and domestic. So that's CrowdTangle. And don't worry, we're going to take a look at it again when we do Instagram. So welcome to Instagram, folks. So on Instagram, again, like any other platform, we're going to go ahead and start by being proactive. So we're going to ask you to follow and search for relevant accounts and hashtags that are local to you, as well as accounts that maybe aren't local to you, but make sense for you to follow, right? So maybe these are advocacy groups online. Maybe these are local politicians. We also ask you to post on our behalf proactively. Now, we have a whole guide to Instagram, which I think is really helpful because there's a limit to how much I can show you on the computer, because Instagram is primarily a mobile platform. However, there are two ways to search. So just like on Facebook, you can search using hashtags in the main search bar, or you can go back to CrowdTangle. So here I have a few screenshots of what using Instagram itself will look like. So if I'm interested in a hashtag, and remember, these are all provided. So if I'm interested in a hashtag like vote by mail, I would simply go ahead and tap my little magnifying glass at the bottom and put in the hashtag, all one word, vote by mail. And then I could see what tags come up and what posts that produces. If I'm looking for an account, I simply toggle over from tags, which is where I was before, to accounts. And I can look up specific accounts to follow. So here we have a shameless plug for the Common Cause Instagram account. If I'm using CrowdTangle to monitor on Instagram, it's very similar to what we just did, but it looks a little bit different. And I want to go back to where we were on Facebook because I want to show you exactly how we did this. So if I've been searching for something, I want to clear this, right? So I'm going to get rid of Russian Federation only, and I'm going to get rid of the phrase voter fraud, just so we have a clean page. And I'm going to go ahead and click where right now it says Facebook, and instead select Instagram. And now every Instagram post within whatever period of time I've selected is going to come up under voter fraud. So if I want, it will automatically have the last 24 hours, but maybe I want to see the last 3 days. I can scroll down and see posts. And then here we are, we have the My Pillow Man. So if I want to see this post a little bit more closely, get an idea of the page, I can click this little arrow just like I did in CrowdTangle for Facebook and click go to post. And because it's a public post, it'll go ahead and open on Instagram and do so very quickly. So here, this is not disinfo necessarily, because it's totally possible that the MyPillow CEO and president is no longer being carried, that his product is no longer being carried. But there could be disinfo in these comments, which is why it could have been brought up. Again, though, because this isn't really about our democracy issues in this context, it wouldn't be relevant to our work. So here again, you can see more information. Mr. MyPillow is apparently very popular on Instagram. And again, if you were looking at Instagram in general, it would be on your mobile phone or handheld device for the most part, which is why we aren't going through it in a ton of depth. Okay. So Nextdoor. Nextdoor sometimes gets a bad rep, but it is a neighborhood-based social network, and that's why it's so important to our work. So you're going to go ahead and sign up if you would like, using a verifiable home address. So you can only be in one community and in a community where you actually live. So that's why it's so important. So like I can literally only be in my own Nextdoor community. I can't be in Danielle's or any of yours, right? So you may be able to pull key disinformation narratives or to post really good, non-political, nonpartisan, informational inoculation content right into Nextdoor. It's really easy to use Nextdoor. You just go ahead and search for content in your neighborhood newsfeed. We don't need any fancy parentheses. We don't need any fancy quotation marks, which is what I meant a second ago. You can just go ahead and look pretty proactively or search directly. So let me go ahead and show you exactly how to do that now. So we're going to go ahead to my colleague's Nextdoor account. And so if I'm here first, if I'm on Nextdoor, just to orient ourselves, over here we have the neighborhood. So this is Berkeley, California. And here we have posts that are in the community. So if we update, we can see just everything that's being posted. So we can go ahead and just scroll through, but that's not the most efficient way. So if we instead go and search in Nextdoor to voter fraud, Nextdoor may take its sweet time. There we go. You can see what comes up. So there might be businesses. We're not so interested in that. And then here we might see posts. Now, what I will say is that this is from November 7th, which isn't super relevant to us now, right? So what I might do is when I'm searching on Nextdoor, I might want to say that I'm looking for posts within a certain time period. So for example, where it says anytime, let's say I want the past week. We'll see what comes up, and nothing, which is actually a good sign. Now, I'm going to show you just what happens when there is a lot. So I'll put inauguration because, as we know, inauguration day is tomorrow. And we can see the type of discourse that's happening. So again, we get businesses first. Everyone's always trying to sell you something. But then you have other information. So this isn't so relevant, but if we put, say, the past week, we're more likely to get relevant results. This Nextdoor, I will say, this community is pretty cleaned up. But I will also say that there's often a lot of disinfo just flying around. And so putting our inoculation content here can be really, really impactful. Again, as a reminder, we have specialists who work with us and volunteer captains who work with us on Reddit, YouTube, and TikTok. So if you're interested in one of those platforms, definitely let us know in Slack once we get all on there together and we can figure it out. Okay, so again, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick temperature check and see if there are big sets of questions. We're really through the meat of the presentation now, so it'll just be details moving forward. So Danielle, please go ahead.
Okay, so I got a few questions of how to report exactly. You report all disinformation posts in our incident, all disinformation and misinformation posts in our incident report. It's a little report that we have made up for you guys, and you will put the link in it, a picture of basically the post, and you will tell us basically what's wrong with it. and we will check it over and we'll review it, and then we will submit it for elevation or to be taken down by our platform partners. So we have partnerships with Facebook and all these platforms that we work with, and we suggest which posts to take down to them and tell them reason why our monitors found this, and they usually will take it down. And that's usually the protocol that I see a lot of you guys asking about. Even if it's misinformation or not meaningful misinformation, do not interact with the poster. It's kind of hard to determine whether someone's intent or something through a few characters, and we want you guys to stay safe. So based on a safe side, if you do not know the person, we don't suggest interaction.
I will say an exception to this is if it's someone who's like holding public office, right? And like they seemingly just made a mistake. Or if it's someone where you click the profile, it seems like they're putting good stuff out there most of the time, right? So I do a little research, right? It's like when your mom wanted to know whose house you were going to, like check it out a little bit. But yeah, if it's misinfo, it can be helpful to ask the poster to update the post. I also am going to go through the reporting process next. That's the last little bit that we've got tonight.
Oh, also, I see questions about shifts. Shifts are basically scheduled times which you can sign up to monitor. They span for 3 hours. You do not have to monitor that entire time. God knows we have, most of our monitors don't. On shift, you would put in a shift chat with your shift captain, a staff member, and the rest of the people on shift with you. So you can talk and see what's going on across the country for those that live further away. You can see what's going on in your backyard for those that live near you, and everything else like that. So you can make up whatever time you want to come, whenever time you want to come. We still are open to submit a report at any time. We'll still review it, I promise. Yep, anytime you want to make a report, you can. Tomorrow.
I don't see it right away, but we're around.
We're around, we promise. We'll get to you. Someone will. As far as to monitoring far-right platforms like Gab and Parler and other things popping up, we have staff members that take that risk for you guys. So we have staff members already there monitoring for us there. We do not need you guys to join them. Swear we don't. We do not need you guys to join them. We don't need you guys to make reports about them. We have, if they're shared on Twitter, we're welcome and we're open to taking up those reports, we swear.
Again, your safety is important to us. And there can be people with some extreme views on these platforms. It's also just not the best use of our energy because unfortunately, Parler is not going to take anything down. Twitter might.
How many of our monitors are 70 and older? We actually have a fair amount of elderly monitors on with us. You would think we would have mostly young people, but it's actually the boomers and everyone else who's driving this effort.
Yeah, Danielle and I bring down the average age significantly.
We really do.
Yeah. It's often an older crowd, but we welcome everybody. We literally have monitors, last time I checked, ages 12 to 84, but definitely skewing on the older end.
Definitely.
We call them our seasoned monitors versus our younger monitors. You know, everybody has a place here. Everybody has an access point into this work.
For access to CrowdTangle, that can be attained by using our CrowdTangle request form, and you can find that in Slack. So all this information will be emailed to you guys at the end of this, including the slides and the recording of this.
Okay. I'm going to move along for now, but again, we'll stay a little bit after, and I think we may even have another husky here waiting for us for a temperature check. So again, hang tight with us while we talk about reporting and then getting on to Slack. We're all going to do it together, and it's going to be awesome. So thank you so much again for coming on Inauguration Night Eve. Okay, so how to respond, y'all. We've touched on this, but I just want to review. So if you're feeling like this woman on the right now, do not worry. You're going to be as upbeat about it as I am. So when we're doing voter assistance, which again is just during an election time, you can offer resources and trusted sources. Common Cause will provide frequently asked question sheets for you that are pertaining to the specific election. When you use our incident report form, you can go ahead and select voter assistance, and our team can follow up, whether that means at the state level or a national level. Misinformation. So like Danielle said, again, if you're not sure, don't interact. But if the poster seems to be posting in good faith, correct the post and report to Common Cause using our incident report form. If disinformation, remember, do not amplify it. So no retweeting, no sharing, no sad react, no comment, and instead channel that into a productive way, to a productive use, and report it to us. So again, here's a little map of like, okay, I'm a social media monitor. I found content. Now what? So the first thing I want to think to myself is, what type of content is this? So going over here to the far side, if this is a partisan attack or it's like non-democracy related disinformation, so maybe it's about the vaccine, go ahead and ignore that. That's somebody else's job. I promise you that like every senator has people looking out for them online. That is not helpful to us. And it actually does take away from the core of our work. In the middle here, this is democracy related misinfo that's been posted by mistake. Again, go ahead and if it's in good faith, provide that correct info if you're comfortable and ask them to update the post. And then complete our incident report form. Lastly, over here to the far side, if this is potentially harmful disinfo that is surrounding major democracy issues, do not amplify. We give you a second even here in the graphic to remember, do not amplify, and then go ahead and complete our incident report form. And finally, here it is, the long-awaited incident report form. So when should I report? When it comes to our incident report form, when in doubt, fill it out. We review all of them. We have an ample team on the back end to do so. Often if you're helping voters, if you're flagging disinfo, or if you see talk of violence relating to our democracy, these are all times to report. We're actually going to go and file a fake report together. So here we are. Here is our incident report form. And all you need to do, it's very simple, is you can click this form and sign yourself up, and then it'll autofill your name and email, which I like. I'm not going to do that now because I've signed up like 80 times. So you will put your name, you will put your email. You're going to put the date and time that you found the content. You're going to put the state if applicable. So right now I'm sitting in New York today, but if I found something in Idaho, I would click Idaho. I'm going to let you know what the platform is, right? That way someone can follow up. So if I found something on Facebook, I would click Facebook. Then here we have type. So we have misinfo, disinfo, voter assistance, or other. Depending on what you pick here, the form will spit out some other options. So we ask for a little more detail. So what is it about, right? Is it accidental? Is it about false election results? Is it voter fraud? Other? Is it about the insurrection? Which I hate we have to have as an option, but here we are. And then does the issue require follow-up? Now, some folks get really, really hung up on this. Please do not. No matter what, we take a look at it, right? But this just helps us to prioritize what to look at. So yes, by a disinformation analyst online just means that a person at a computer who knows about this stuff needs to look. Yes, by a staffer on the ground means that something's happening in person. And so looking online probably won't help. Yes, this is time sensitive means we need to and probably can help within 15 minutes. Maybe is like Rose, kid, you gave me a lot of options. And no is that you help a voter, they say, have a nice day. You say same here, right? Like that's been resolved. So that doesn't need follow up. Then we're going to ask you to give us a link to content. So we give you instructions on how to do that for TweetDeck, CrowdTangle, and Instagram. If you need to for another platform and you need help, remember in general, it's just how you get to the web page. So here on this page, this up here is the URL, which is how I get to this post. It's super, super simple. And if you're on Nextdoor, you don't need a link because we can't get in your community. So remember how a long time ago I pressed those 3 dots to copy my tweet? Well, if I right click paste, it's still hanging out and is ready to go. And then we ask you to take a screenshot. If a screenshot's new, do not let this be a barrier to entry. We have tech support so we can help you. And we also have a guide for how to take a screenshot. So it's accessible for really everyone. And then any comments you have. So this is bad because, and then for organization, your common cause national. And again, if you fill out this autofill form at the beginning, that will fill out for you every time. Okay, so taking a screenshot. Consider the screenshot as a receipt of the content, right? So maybe it's taken down, great, but like a bunch of people probably saw it, so we need a record. So if you're on a Windows PC and you just want to capture the disinfo, go ahead and use the Windows key. So that's your 4 little squares, Shift and S, All at the same time, select the content with your cursor to take a screenshot. Again, we have written instructions on this, so no need to be furiously scribbling your notes. If you're on a Mac, you can go ahead and use Command-Shift-4 and select the content to capture part of the screen. If you're on an iPhone or an iPad that has a home button, you can go ahead and hold down the home button and the sleep-wake key at the same time. On a newer device, go ahead and hold down our same sleep-wake key and the up volume key. So this is for devices where there is not a home button. Now, these are just the types of devices that most of our monitors use, but we have instructions for every device we could possibly think of, which we will provide at the end with all of our other materials. Okay, so finishing it up and putting it all together. So what happens to your reports? Well, I'm so happy you asked. So this is the cycle of our Stop Disinformation program and our social media monitoring work. So here at the top right, you all start by sharing our pro-democracy content, right? So this is pro-voter content, it's pro-democracy. This is our inoculation content. So we give this to you and we start by having you share it. Then you monitor for the concerning stuff, voters or any American who needs help with something relating to voting in elections, misinformation, disinformation. So the blue part is all of your essential work. Then moving around, these are our two main options in our toolkit for what we can do at Common Cause to follow up. So sometimes we'll do rapid response. So this is letting people in states know what's happening and maybe even sending them texts, right? So an example of this is during the election, we would let people know via text if their polling place had changed. If it's disinformation that violates the platform's policies, we go ahead and work directly with our contacts at platforms to request takedowns. So we contact them, we tell them, hey, you should remove this because it violates your terms of service or your civic integrity policy. And then based on what you put, we use an evidence-based approach to create pro-democracy content, right? So we're not just out here making content and hoping it works. We're using exactly what you give us, and we're making more content after that. So our disinformation analysts and our communications team and myself create counter speech, which is just like things that help us to go against that messaging, and our inoculation content. And that goes right back to you. So it's share, monitor, respond, create, share. It's my favorite cycle. All right, and this is our last temperature check before the end of the training. So Danielle, I'll let you field or let me know of any questions that you may have.
Okay, I'm going to start with the one I was just answering to Brett, who asks, is there a recommended metric or searching terms for voters who are in need of help? Well, I will say that we're not very much looking for voters in need anymore right now, but I will say that looking for certain questions voters may have, typing it out actually does bring up a lot, such as can't vote or key phrases like that actually help a lot as well, or machine problems or things like that. Do your reports get accounts removed from the platform? Yes. We've had full account takedowns, full account censorships, and all the other stuff. We've recently, our most recent takedown was last week. We got a right-wing troll taken down who was spreading misinformation and also hyping up the violence that was happening at the Capitol. So that's our big fish that we recently got taken down. All this information can be found written in our documents, steps on how to do this. All of this can be found later on in that email we're going to send you. We promise you don't have to review this all over again if you don't want to. For joining private groups, we suggest that you join private groups that make sense to you and yourself and who you are as your profile. We don't suggest joining groups that are out the way, like far right Trumpers 2024. If that's not you, don't join. We do care about what's happening in those groups, but we mainly want you guys in a safe place is our main priority. And I will be putting links and more information in the chat, but again, more things will be available to you guys. And I think that's about it, Rose.
Great. Yeah, no, sorry, I was prematurely hustling us along here. Okay, so onboarding. How do you get all this information that we've been promising you vaguely? Well, Slack is one place, our Basecamp document is one place, and so is the email. So let's start with Slack. So what is Slack? So for those of y'all who haven't used it, Slack is an easy place to stay in touch. So back in the day, we would have all hung out together in a volunteer headquarters. I would have brought pizza, Danielle would bring the soda, all would have been well. But because we're in a pandemic, we aren't able to do that. So this is our equivalent. So here you can get tools and resources, you can ask questions, you can connect with other activists, volunteer captains, our staff, and you can sign up for shifts. You can think of Slack, and how I think of Slack is a better organized Facebook Messenger for business. So to sign up for our Slack is easy. Danielle is going to put the link in the chat for you, and that's going to be the last thing we do together as a group today at training. You can use Slack on a web browser or as an app. And when you get involved in our Slack, all you have to do is agree that you'll be nonpartisan during your work with us, and then you're all set to join. Now, I want to be very clear. You are more than welcome to have your own opinions when you're not doing your work with us. So when you're not on shift, be as partisan as you like. I'm not here to censor your free speech, right? But while you're with us, and I always say to me and like my team, when we're in work hours, no partisan content. I hold myself to that standard, and so I just expect that of the team. When you're in our Slack, you can use the social media monitoring channel for all things about our program, the See Shift sign up channel to, you guessed it, sign up for shifts, and the Ask Questions Here channel for any questions that you might have. And a fellow or a staff person or another volunteer can help you. This is what our Slack looks like, just so you aren't confused when you get there for the first time. Mine has a lot more stuff in it than yours will. So do not worry if this looks overwhelming. At first, we're gonna get you all signed up and acclimated. We also have for you a how to use Slack document. So if Slack is new to you, we have so many resources to help you get onboarded. So here on the left-hand sides, we have channels, which is just a fancy word for a group chat. And here I've clicked social media monitoring, which is where you'll also spend a lot of your time. Here, I clearly took this screenshot on a Friday because we have 2 shift chats that are up. You will be automatically added to a shift chat for the shifts that you sign up for. And that's a place where you can talk to a staff person who's in charge of monitoring and helping you through that shift, and other volunteers just like you. If you want to send a direct message to somebody, you can do so at the bottom here. Click the plus sign and put in the name of the person you want to direct message. It's a really great community. It's vibrant. There's lots of folks there, and we're so excited that you're going to be a part of it with us all. Okay, so next steps. The number one thing that we expect now, and what would be so helpful, is to go join Slack. So if you go to, again, See Shift Sign Up, you can sign up for your first shift to practice your skills. Tomorrow is an essential monitoring day. So if you can take on one of our many inauguration shifts, we have shifts tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern time. You can expect weekly emails from us with updates, changes to shifts, and everything else you need to know. And all of this is going to help you to make a difference in your community tomorrow and beyond. So hopefully I answered what we do now for you and David Rose. Okay, and then lastly, here are all of the resources that we've promised you. So the central document where you want to go for everything, if you want a one sheet, is our social media monitoring base camp. So we give you steps. We tell you how to join the team and what channels you need to look at. We show you training. So guess what? If you didn't get enough of me already, you can always go ahead and watch a video of me talking about one of our core platforms or read our printable guides. So it's really, really easy to get more information that fits your learning style. Here we have our CrowdTangle request form and how to use CrowdTangle. We also suggest what to do during your shift. So if you feel lost, there's a place to find help. We also have lists of search terms and cheat sheets. So if day of you forget how to use TikTok and you want to monitor, we're going to tell you and help you how to do that. We also have our social media monitoring toolkit, which is in a super essential document, and it's a living, breathing document, which means we change it almost every day to make sure that we're up to date with current terms. So starting at the top here, we have our table of contents. And we can see things like types of problems, mis and disinformation, definitions, and we also will give you search terms of the day at the very top, so you know what we're focused on and where we need to put our monitoring efforts. We have our sharing our proactive posts, and then how to get help. Then we also give you a little background. So if somebody online is like, what's common cause? You have this. We have all of the training materials in one place. And then we have some information that's only relevant during election season. So because we're not actively in an election at this exact moment in time that this is being recorded, we won't go through that part today. Again, here is all of that information. So Basecamp, toolkit, how to take a screenshot, joining our Slack, our incident report form, our CrowdTangle request form, and more opportunities. So we always want y'all to keep your involvement consistent with us, and we love having all these volunteers in our Common Cause family. So we have a lot of other ways you can get involved. Mostly our most popular is our direct voter contact, which is our phone banking and text banking program. So if you want to do that alongside social media monitoring, we always encourage it. So thank you so much for coming to our webinar today. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to get to work with you all. I'm going to go ahead now and stop sharing my screen so I can take a moment to look in the chat to make sure that major questions haven't been missed. I also see that some participants have raised their hand. So Danielle, do you want to go ahead and see about hands raised? And I'm